The asthma gets her.
Regional Councillor Somerville, thank you so much for sitting down with me on the
Very welcome.
last day of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities here in Ottawa, Ontario.
Very sad.
As a regional councillor for Halton Hills, what brings you here, even in your role as past president? What makes you keep on coming back?
You know, part of me wants to be a wise ass and say a train, but it's actually. So one of the funny things when you come to an event like this, I see some people I only see once a year, so I end up zipping around talking to people, getting caught up, and just that chance to talk to peers, because when you're an elected official, you don't really have that person very often you can call. On your council, you're always going through the same thing. So I look at this as Canada's largest peer support group for elected officials, because we can talk to each other, find out the issues we're having in our homes and in our communities, and we can try to find solutions, because what they might have been going through, I might have already had to do that, right? And that's the one thing I find is that networking is so key and is such a great part of it. Is, you know, talking to somebody from Vancouver Island who were telling me about an issue they had, and they said, you know, we actually had that, you know, and gave them some solutions on that, right? And we had one where, you know, we had it with, you know, fireworks, and they said, well, you know, we've done this, and this, and well, you know, we went the other way, and that's what I'm finding is always the best part of it. And the workshops, hearing from the leaders talking about municipal issues is always good, though they don't always answer the questions.
Now, we were joking before we recorded that you were 10 times past president.
Yes.
Since you left the president's office compared to today, are the issues you're hearing in the sort of the networking and the hallway conversations similar to 10 years ago when you were president, or has anything changed? Because you know what my follow-up question is going to be.
Well, some things have, some things haven't. We were talking a lot about rural broadband and connectivity 15 years ago. And when I was president, we were talking about how we needed to have, you know, sustainable long-term funding. We had through COVID where the federal government stepped up and helped municipalities by doubling the Canada Community Building Housing Fund, you know, just in that short time. And some of the things have gotten better, where I think there are a lot at the federal government. And when I say the federal government, it's not, I don't mean the bureaucrats, I mean the elected officials who tend to understand what our issues are more. And then sometimes you hear them say some things and you think they're going backwards. They forgot.
So you've seen the transition of governments, I'm assuming, 10 years ago,
yes,
from Prime Minister Harper to Prime Minister Trudeau, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah.
And now you've seen the transition from Prime Minister Trudeau to Prime Minister Carney. You were in that room when
yes.
Prime Minister Carney was speaking. Do you give a little bit of hope, or is this first year growing pains for the new Prime Minister? Because you've been there. You've seen the transition. You've been a municipal councillor for some time.
Yeah.
Do you get any sense that there's optimism in the room of FCM, that this government is taking the municipal-federal relationship a little bit more serious?
Yes.
Really?
I do have optimism. I honestly do. I think also part of that optimism comes from a minority government that will be looking for ways to, you know, try to work together, as they damn well should. I do have that optimism. And, you know, Prime Minister Carney, when he was coming in with the campaign, like, you know, we heard him say the other day about we want to see how development charges are reducing them in half. But he said, but we have to make sure that municipalities are not left, you know, are made whole and not left on the hook. A lot of them will say we want to see development charges cut in half and stop. And it's because they think we use development charges to put money in the bank, and we're providing terrible things like roads and sewers and bridges and sidewalks and parks. They don't, you know, like, I never understood how somebody could be an elected official at home, suddenly run for MP, and when they get up here, what happened to all that stuff they used to deal with in their community? Like, development charges are providing services, and even then they're discounted. Yes, there's only one taxpayer, but if we're discounting development charges, it's going on the property tax bill, because that's the only thing municipalities have.
I want to talk about the future a little bit, if you don't mind.
Let me get my crystal ball in.
But you know what you should know. But actually, I'll ask the question that I need to ask before I ask the future question: is How do we solve these issues? Because you're talking about development charges, you're talking about the federal government, people getting elected, going away and forgetting where they came from. How do we change that?
Well, let's look at the framework we operate under as municipalities. 1867, so it was probably drafted 1865. Queen Victoria was well in her reign and had another 25 years to go in her reign. So we are using rules for municipalities from the era of buggy whips. Like, it's not even, like we were driving around in beautiful horse-drawn landaus. Like we are trying to solve problems using tools from another era. If I asked you to go out and said, build a replica of Noah's Ark, but use the tools they had at the time, and then I said, okay, Chris, now that you've spent 30 years doing that, go out and build Noah's Ark using the tools from today. Which one would be a lot easier to work with?
Neither for me, because I'm just a carpenter, but I'm getting your point.
Yeah. But and that's the thing. Like, we have to recognize, municipalities have to be recognized as a mature order of government, but we also have to act like one too. We have to make sure that we are doing the things like, working with our partners, working with our neighboring municipalities, and not having the fiefdoms, and that happens in some areas of the country.
It's that old Hatfield and McCoy routine, right? It's,
yes.
My brother and your brother didn't get along, so our municipalities can never get along.
Exactly.
I want to, again, turn to the future. And
sure.
Delegates will be heading home today. We're recording this on the 4th day of the convention. You've been a delegate, you've been president, you've been first vice president.
24th year I've been at consecutive.
What's the advice you give to delegates that say, what do I do from now here? Because there's a lot of I've spoken to a lot of first timers.
There's a lot of first timers. I always put my hand up whenever they ask who's a first timer.
And everyone chuckles.
Everyone chuckles. That's Clark.
What should people do? What should councillors, what should delegates do when they get back to their own communities?
When you are talking to those folks who are in the trade show and you're talking to those folks here, don't let the connections end when the airport door closes or the bus door or the train door closes and you get back home. Keep the open mind of the things you saw here. If you saw somebody in that trade show that you thought actually had a very good idea and they contact you, they all follow up, engage them. Have them talk to your staff and say, will this work in our community? Sometimes they will. The ones who spent hours with the folks from Green Municipal Funds, if you spoke to them here, set up that meeting back in your community where they will come out and they will talk to you about how you can do that. We tend to, when we're some people, when they go to conferences, when they get home, they kind of, they look through the swag bag and they keep the mints and the gloves and all those things, the cool little trinkets and the flashlights. But look at the material you brought home and try to look at it through that fresh perspective when you are back there as well, because that'll help you. There is so much information that is here. Like some of the things I was talking to people about here, I will follow up with when I'm home, because I got to find out more about it to see if that'll work. Because do you know what separates the largest from smallest communities in Canada? The number of zeros in our budget. We all have similar issues, but it's just trying to do it. And if you're not here with groups like FCM, Roger Anderson from Ontario, who was the longtime Durham regional chair,
Quite well.
Yep, Roger always said that if you're not at the table, you're going to end up on the menu. If you're not there, and that's what happens. We have to try to make sure we speak with a common voice. We try to get these issues resolved.
So it leads into my final question, and it's something you just said there, but there is a lot of scuttlebutt that FCM has traditionally looked at more urban issues.
Yep.
At this convention, we're seeing a more rural focus. Now, I don't want to say Halton House is rural, but according to the definition of the federal government,
We are. Yeah.
What do rural municipalities get from an organization like FCM when there's concern that it is more urban dominated, with Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, because they are the big centers, they are where the population lies. But like you said, the only difference between them and the MD of Starland County or Halton Hills is the number of zeros at the end.
Yeah.
What does an organization like Halton Hills get from FCM that they couldn't do on its own?
Well, I'm going to use the example of Leah Main from Silverton, British Columbia. Leah has been active on committees and the board and served as BC caucus chair for a number of years. She is from a community of under 200 people of Silverton, British Columbia. She is at the table and engaging and working with staff on issues at FCM. So she might be sitting beside a Olivia Chow, or a mayor from Mayor Plum, or Danny Breen, or some of these other big city mayors. She's sitting at the table at the very same space they are, and is able to provide the input into that onto what is needed. And it is funny. Majority of FCM members are rural. It is 100%. But until we can get some of the larger media, like I know in my municipality, if we make an issue on the Toronto news stations, it's not usually a good thing that has happened, because we don't have that media coverage. We don't get those daily newspapers anymore. We get the online ones, and some of them do a tremendous job. Like, a shout out to the one in my own community, Halton Hills Today, does a wonderful job on trying to being able to cover these things. But that's what happens. Like, if an issue happens in Toronto and it sounds highlighted, everyone thinks, well, that happened in Toronto, it must happen everywhere. But what they also get out of it, Chris, is that opportunity to network, that opportunity to provide direct input. Before, when I was the vice chair of the Rural Forum, I was the first vice chair of the Rural Forum, not from Western Canada, elected, by the way. I don't think you ever knew that.
You and Allison Story have something in common now.
Well, and that was, that was 2010. That long ago that I was the first vice chair elected, with Dave Merritt, now the Minister of Agriculture for Saskatchewan, was my chair.
Wow.
That's who I worked with. So, we did that. But the rural communities, sometimes the problem that they have is what they're really after is not always clear. And that's where I think sometimes from them being involved with groups like FCM, they can get that message clear, they can get that focus on it, so they can actually try to amplify what it is that they need and what they really want. There are always people out there in municipalities, all they want to be is left alone. They just want to go about their business. But when they need something, like, there might be a cost for them to apply for a GMF loan, but it's making sure that they understand that if they're getting to that point of applying, they might have a pretty good shot at getting it. And that can sometimes be the capacity. How do you build the capacity? Unless you're doing it by increasing property taxes, that becomes a difficult thing to do. And it's always easier to say, I don't want to spend money on this, than saying, I'm going to spend money on this because this is the payback. The example is that I always like to give is there's always somebody around a council table who will tell you, I saved you a lot of money this year by not putting your taxes up, without realizing that 15 years down the road, that bridge they didn't do the things on, they're now going to pay 8 times more on.
Regional Councillor.
No,
Somerville.
it's Clark.
I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you one more time in Edmonton, Alberta, for the next FCM convention.
And then Halifax.
There you go. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Chris, I'm always eager to sit down with you. I absolutely enjoy talking to you every single time I see you. And hopefully you'll be back in Ottawa for AMO. Hopefully you're able to make it back for that. August.
I will make sure my calendar's clear that week, but I did not see that on my calendar yet.
Yeah.
But the business people might tell me otherwise when I get back to calendar. But thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And thank you for the work you're doing, because you are highlighting and allowing, municipal elected officials to be able to talk, and you're looking in behind, and I think you have a far better grasp on some of the issues going on municipally than some of the people who are here elected, to be very honest.
I'm going to just not use that on because that's going to make me look bad. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Chris.